Welcome to Train Signal. You're watching automation using PowerCLI. So first of all, a word of caution. PowerCLI is really cool. It's also very powerful, but it can get complex. And that can be a problem on an exam like this. So it's a deep topic, and it really goes further than what I expect you to see on the exam. On the exam, I don't expect you to have to sit down and write out a PowerCLI script. I don't expect you to have to be a PowerCLI expert, but I would expect you to be able to at least kind of look at a script and understand what it does and see if there's an error in the script when you run it, which is fairly obvious because it throws a big red arrow up in front of you. But I want you to be able to understand those fundamentals. If you want to learn more about PowerCLI, I highly recommend Hal Rottenberg's course. He has a vSphere PowerCLI training at Train Signal, and I sat through this course a while back. It was my introduction to PowerCLI. I'm not an expert in PowerCLI by any stretch, but I didn't really have any issue with PowerCLI questions on the exam. Like I said, I don't really sit down and write these scripts all the time, but I can understand them and muddle my way through them. And if you've never touched PowerCLI, that's kind of what I hope for you to be able to do after this lesson. But again, this is one single kind of short mixed lesson against an entire course that Hal has done. So if you're a full-on vSphere administrator and you really want to learn how to script and automate, go sit through Hal's course. You'll be really, really glad you did. So what is PowerCLI? So vSphere PowerCLI is a simple C# and PowerShell interface to VMware vSphere APIs. The long and short of it is, it's that Microsoft provides PowerShell, which is a really good scripting language. It's easy, it's simple. You can just almost read through a script and completely understand what something does with almost no PowerShell experience. PowerCLI is VMware's kind of addition to that. So they leverage PowerShell, and they give you a bunch of what you'll learn are called commandlets that let you access many common features within vSphere. And the cool thing is they're very simple. Like one commandlet is like, get VM, and it'll go to the vCenter you're connected to and pull you a list of VMs. You can do get snapshot. You can do, get cluster. You can do all kind of stuff. Then you can set them, view them, create them, whatever you want to do, all using these little commandlets. And you can gather information and script all sorts of different things. And the nice thing is, if you go out on Google, there's a ton of pre-written scripts. So if you want to script to, sort out all your snapshots, or, sort out all types of VMs, or automate creation or movement of VMs, people have already done a lot of these. So maybe it doesn't do exactly what you want it to do, but you can start with a pre-written script and then kind of, work on it from there. A couple of requirements for installing PowerCLI. You need .NET 2.0 and Windows PowerShell 1.0 or 2.0. Supported OSs: Windows 7, 2K8, Vista, XP SP2, and 2003 SP2. I haven't tried running on like 2012. It seems to work. I haven't tried running on, well, I guess I have run it on Windows 8 because I'm doing it right now, but it seems to work just fine as well. So, but that's the official list anyway. So remote signing. So by default, PowerShell is set to require code signing for scripts, and this is a problem, as many downloaded scripts are not signed for security, so you want to disable that. You'll get a warning message when it pops up, and we have to do a set execution policy. That'll probably be the first command that you run in PowerCLI, and I'll show you that here in a second. So let's first do a quick lab. Confirm requirements. We'll install PowerShell. We'll install PowerCLI, and we'll enable remote signing. I'm going to tell you now, we're not going to install PowerShell because I'm doing this lesson under Windows 8 and it's already installed. But installing PowerShell is actually very simple. If you have an older OS that doesn't have it included, like Windows 8 does, then you just go download PowerShell 2.0 from Microsoft. You go next a couple times, and you're done, and then we move on to PowerCLI. So with that, let's go ahead and jump to the lab. So I've got the install files right here on my desktop, so I'll just double-click PowerCLI. Say yes, and it's going to look like every other installation you've done. And it's going to say, look, your execution policy of this computer is not set to remote signed. This prevents execution of PowerShell scripts and will result in errors when PowerCLI is invoked. So we will change this using the set execution policy here in a second. Next, read that license agreement. Install PowerCLI. There's also a vCloud Director PowerCLI if you want to use that. Not part of the exam, but it does have some vCloud Director commandlets. And we'll say install. Once that's installed, the next thing I'm going to go ahead and install is this right here, which is Update Manager commandlets. So we'll talk about those in a slide in a minute, but I figure we'll go ahead and do the install now while we're here. All that does is kind of what it sounds like is it gives you some commandlets to manage Update Manager, baselines, patches, things like that. That is noted on the blueprint, so I want to make sure you know how to do that. I don't really see a lot of people doing it, but it's on the blueprint. It'll say, do you want to restart? And we're going to say no. And let's do Update Manager, and it's basically going to be the same thing. Next, accept, yeah. And it'll do that, and it runs some scripts in the background, and you're finished. So to start it, you got two options, 32-bit and regular 64-bit. I'll start 64-bit. It'll grind here for a second, and it's going to say, hey, we can't install the PowerCLI environment, cannot be loaded because running scripts is disabled on this system. For more information, blah, blah, blah. So we do set execution policy remote signed. Say yes. Oh, that's right. I gotta run as admin. We have to set that because it's a system-wide setting. So set execution policy. And you can do tabs. So like if I do set-x, and it'll do the rest. If you just want to do set-, it'll walk through all of your possible options. So you'll see me use tab complete a lot. And it'll also do it on a lot of the parameters as well, which is pretty handy. There we go. So let me exit out of this real quick and restart it, and I don't have to restart it in admin mode. And there we go. And so if you get the red message, you got to set execution policy remote sign, and then close it, open it, and you should see this. So a couple of quick commands while we do this. So first thing you want to do is connect to a vCenter server or an ESXi host. I'll connect to vCenter, and I just give it the IP. And it'll give me a warning about the certificate, which is normal. And it wants me to specify credentials. If you own a workstation that is part of a domain and you have admin privileges and all that stuff, you don't have to enter that. My Windows 8 box is not part of my domain for no good reason. I need to do that. So there you go. If you want to get help, you can do get PowerCLI help. So you can do get PowerCLI community. Actually, that's kind of a good one. If you do that, it'll pop up a web browser and take you to the PowerCLI community page from VMware, which is actually kind of cool. Get PowerCLI help, and it'll pop the help up. But to give you an idea of a command, actually, you can do get vi command, and it'll show you all your commandlets. So study those and know every one of them for the exam, right? No, not so much. But it gives you a list of all of them. So then we can do something like get VM. Let it query. And it'll pull back all the VMs in my environment, and then you can start doing things with those. So that's the real quick thing. So know how to install PowerCLI. Double click the icon, next. Know how to enable scripts. So it's set execution policy space remote signed. Because if you don't do that, you can't even run PowerCLI. Because really PowerCLI is kind of like a script that gets run immediately and sets up this working environment for you. So you got to be able to do that. Not to mention scripts that you're going to download from the internet and use as well. So do that. Know how to get some help. And I'll show you how to do some more command help here in just in another lab. But that'll get you started. So let's talk a little bit about commandlet concepts. You've already seen a couple because we just ran a few commandlets. But let's go back over everything. So PowerShell commands are called commandlets. Commandlets use a consistent what we call verb-noun structure. Verb specifies the action, get VM, for example. Noun specifies the object to operate on. So we can do all sorts of stuff with that. Commandlets have, they take parameters and arguments, and this is pretty much like every other command, right? You'll do a command dash parameter 1 dash parameter 2 argument argument, just like we do with, say, ESXCLI commands, or say ESX top, where we do ESX top batch mode, and then we set the intervals and the delays. So it's pretty common stuff, very simple to use. The nice thing is the commandlets are named very descriptively. So again, get VM, for example, new VM host, if you want to add a new vSphere host, new data store to create a new data store. It's all pretty simple, and there's some very good help inside the system as well. You can also do environmental variables. They store information about the operating system environment, and basically these are things like the local environment. So get item dash path and all the environment variables. So let me show you that. So get item dash path, and it shows you all the environment variables for the system. I don't usually use these, maybe for some pathing statements, but it's mentioned in the blueprint. But while I'm in here, I just talked about some of the commandlet and the commandlet help. So to see a list of all the commands, you can do get vi command. That'll show you everything, and some things to keep in mind. Anything to retrieve information normally starts with get, so get inventory, get hard disk, get baseline from the update manager list, get ESXCLI, get ESXi image profile. All those get and show you information. Then there's a few minor ones: import, install, invoke. But to move things, it's move cluster, move data store, move VM for vMotioning things. To create a new object, it's new, so new cluster, new CD drive, new folder, new VApp, new template, new VM, etc. The opposite of new to create is remove. So we have remove CD drive, remove cluster, remove hard disk, remove VApp, remove VM, etc. And then we scroll down, and there's set is used to set like parameters or options. So set deploy options, set data store, set data center, set cluster, set DRS rules. Then you've got start and stop for like starting and stopping VMs or VM hosts. Suspend, there's some test commands, and a few others. But those are the major things. So if you get confused on something, you can at least start, well, if I want to find something, I probably use a get command. You can do get help and then do like set VM, and it'll give you the information on that command. So it gives you an overview of it, and then all the options and parameters, a description, and then there's related links. So one, it's its online help, and then it's got other commands that you might use with this one. So since we're modifying a VM, you may want to get VM, move VM, new VM, etc., and you can look at that. To see examples of using this command, you can do get help, set VM examples, and it will spit out a few examples. Okay, so you can apply a custom spec, revert the VM virtual machine to initial state snapshot, upgrade the virtual machine hardware using setvm-vm name and version v7. So it shows you that. If you look here at the bottom, you can do detailed, which shows you a whole lot of information. It splits out all these options and parameters and tells you what to do, whether they're required, and what their options and settings are. You can do full, which takes it even further. So it does show you everything required: position, default value, accept input, and accept wildcard characters. It tells you everything. So it's not hard to get help on these commands. So if you want to know what a command does, or you're not sure what strings you need to pass it, use the get help command. So again, very useful. Update Manager, we already installed this. So the VMware vSphere Update Manager PowerCLI kit, I guess, provides a set of commandlets for modifying things. You download that there and you install it like I showed you. To see a list of all your commands for Update Manager, you run the get command ps snap-in. So again, get command ps snap-in VMware Automation. And those are all your options for managing Update Manager. You can set baselines, get patches, scan inventories, all that stuff. I would demo this, but it seems to crash PowerShell under Windows 8. The rest of the commands in the standard PowerCLI seem to work fine, but if I run a get patch, it'll crash PowerShell. But those are, again, are just commandlets that you can do to pull information, things like that. Don't expect them to have you modify this stuff via PowerCLI on the exam, but it does mention the PowerCLI options in the blueprint, so know how to install it and know to run get command -ps snapin VMware.vum automation to make sure it's installed correctly, because if you don't install it correctly, you run this, it won't give you anything, so make sure you get this list of commands back. And then using commandlets. So I just walked you through get help. So get help and the commandlet like add VM host, -full for more info, or -detailed or examples. You've seen me connect to a local server, so we connect -vi server and the name of the server. You can connect to a vSphere host. You can connect to a vCenter server, whichever you want to manage. And even if you aren't a PowerCLI expert, you can usually understand a script. As you see, the commandlets are fairly informative on the names. And we'll sometimes pipe things in like get VM, and we'll pipe that into get snapshot. So it'll pull a list of VMs to get snapshot and show you a list of all the snapshots from those VMs. So it's something that you can usually follow along. And I think that's important for the exam. Again, I'm not a PowerShell expert. You'll see me fumble around in here at times. But, you know, the idea is to be able to look at existing stuff and modify it. I don't think they're going to ask you and say, hey, go write a script that does this. I would be very surprised. Not going to say they won't, but I'd be very surprised. And even one item in the blueprint is modify an existing script. So I think that's what they'll have you do. And running a script is pretty simple. I have a script actually here on my desktop. Actually, no, I don't. It's on my C drive called Snapshot. So if we open this guy, oops, a little bit big. But it's basically just a command. Now you can get really detailed in these scripts. I mentioned that you can go on the internet and download scripts and look at examples, and they can get really detailed. This is about as simple as you can get because this is just one command line. But it's stored in a script file, and these are just files with .ps1, which is the PowerShell extension. So it gets a list of VMs, dumps them into get snapshot, which will list out a snapshot. Format list command will just kind of format the stuff, so if you're curious about that command, that is not the right command there. So let's do detailed. Not a whole lot. But basically, it just formats out a list, and you can do things like expand, group by, view certain strings, and you can kind of format it how you want. It just kind of modifies it a little bit. So if we do get VM into get snapshot, oh, I'm not connected to a VI server. Really need to add this guy to my domain. So we do get VM into get snapshot, and it'll go through all my VMs, dump that list of VMs and VM objects into get snapshot, and then pull back your snapshots, which I think I have one, which I do. And then we'll dump that into format list, and it formats it in a much better way. And then you can pick and choose how you want things displayed. So that cleans it up. And then the out file command just dumps the format, actually not to HTML, that's wrong, dumps it to text. And so that will dump this to a text file that looks like this onto my desktop. So that's what that command does. And to run these commands, you just give it the path, snapshot, and it'll run it. And give it a second. And there it is. And it's again the output that we just saw. So, you know, also know how to look at these things. So if I like to get snapshots, which kind of makes sense, and I run that, it's going to kick back an error. So the term get snapshot is not recognized as the name of a commandlet. So you're like, well, there's got to be a way to get a snapshot. So there's a couple of ways to figure this out. One, Google it. But let's say you're on the exam and you can't. But you know there's a way to get them. I mean, you want to retrieve information. It's probably a snapshot. If you hit tab, it's get snapshot, not snapshots. And then it wants a value. But it'll tell you real quickly where there's a problem in the existing script that you can go change. Or the way that you're doing something. I mean, just look at the error here that you need. So, I mean, maybe there's it's like this, where they don't even give you, it's just, you think, okay, I want it to run through and get all my snapshots. Well, it's going to say, hey, get snapshot, value cannot be found for the mandatory parameter VM, meaning it needs one or more VMs to know which ones to hit for snapshots. So you could go in here and specify a VM, or if you want to do it on all of them, we would just do get VM and pipe it in. So what I'm trying to get across is, look at the error message. If you get an existing script on the exam, and it's probably going to be one of two things: either add a function to it or fix an error with it. And when you fix errors, just look at the error output. One other common use for this is, so we have out file. You can also do convert. So there's a couple of there's convert to commands. Convert to. There's CSV, which would dump this out to a CSV format. And then there's HTML, which will dump it to HTML format. So there's a couple of those. I think that's all of them. Oh, no, there are a few more. Secure string, XML. I was going to say XML, HTML, and just text output, or CSV, is probably the most common. So that'll allow you to dump that out. So we could take that instead of out. We could format list, pipe that into convert to HTML, pipe that into something like out file, and it'll dump out an HTML file. So again, pretty neat stuff. Let's see if that easily works. Format list into convert to HTML. It's always two T's. And it'll dump out an HTML table, which again you can push out to a file. Oh, I don't think it likes me running that through the list viewer. Oh well. But you can use that commandlet to dump that to HTML. So the key here is figuring out which commandlet to use, looking at the options for it, and like I've said, if you do get VM and you're confused on options, you can do a dash and tab through them. So related objects, IDs, verbose, debug, anything that you want to do. So get VM, name, server, data store. And that's all the VMs that live on data store 01. So you could do this. So if I want to do that and say which VMs on data store 01 have snapshots, same thing. So it's just a way to pull information and filter it down. That's why this gets very large and very complex, is because you can go up 1,000 million different ways with this scripting engine. So I just want you to understand how to find what you need and how to figure out how to use the right commandlet. So we've looked at some of these. You can list VMs on the target system using get VMs. You can save the name and power state of the VM in a resource pool to a file. So you can do things like, this is a variable, $res pool for resource pool equals get resource pool space in the name of the pool. The reason we do this is we want to store the object in that resource pool variable so that we can use it in another command like get VM -location, and the object is resource pool. We dump that into select object name, comma power state. So basically this is going to say get VM and then only show the name and the power state. So I'm not going to do a variable because I just don't need to, but I'll do get VM dash data store 01 into select object, and it's going to be name, comma power state. And it'll just show those two fields. And again, we can dump that out to something else. Oh, that's right. It doesn't like that directory. So, see, users, administrator, oh, JSON, desktop, Windows 8. Okay. And you can do it like that. And again, you can also do format list and what you want to output it to. But again, useful commands. You can start a VM, so you can do get VM mail server and dump that into start VM. That's one way to kind of chain commands and restart or actually start a VM. Host management, again, more commandlets. So if you want to add a vSphere host to vCenter, add VM host, the name, the location, and the user and the password. Put a host in maintenance mode. We use a number of variables here. So host variable is get VM host and the name. Cluster is get my cluster name, where that VM lives. So we're chaining things again. Get cluster, VM host, and we're using the host variable, which says find me the cluster where Jetfire lives. Then we can update host task equals set VM host. So we're setting a parameter on which host? The one in the host variable. We're setting the state to maintenance, which is maintenance mode, and then we're telling it to run asynchronously, meaning go start this task, but don't wait for it to finish before moving on to the next thing. Then you can do get DRS recommendations for that cluster, and then in this host cluster, where the reason is host is entering maintenance mode, apply those DRS recommendations. Because if we just said apply DRS recommendations, it would apply all of them, whether it's for that host or not. But this is a way to say, look, if the host is in maintenance mode, we can apply the DRS recommendations if they're not set to do it automatically. What I want you to get is just to understand you can push things into variables and then use those variables as you go through other commands. You can create objects, connect to vCenter, and then get the root folder, and then create a folder under it called earth. So $folder equals get folder, no recursion, so it'll get the top folder, and then create a new one called earth. You can create new data centers, again, location in the name. You can create new VMs synchronously. Synchronous tasks mean I'm going to wait till this finishes before moving to the next thing in the script. That way, if you want to refer back to this VM, it has to be created first. So new VM, give it the name, give it the host, give it a resource pool, disk, and memory. I also want data store. I meant to add that in this slide. So you want to do -data store and tell it where to store the files, else it's not going to know and throw an error. But you can also do it asynchronously, like I mentioned on the last slide, where it'll start this create VM task and then move on to the next thing in your script, because you may want to create a whole bunch of VMs before doing something. You don't want to wait for each one to finish. So again, run async. By default, as you see, since there's no option, it is synchronous, and then you can do asynchronous. Web service access commandlets. This is one of those things that I think got copied and pasted from an older blueprint because they're now known as API access commandlets. And these are used if the regular commandlets cannot provide the functions you need, which you kind of have to be moving to something pretty advanced before you get out of the space of the regular commandlets. There are two of them, get view and get vi object by vi view. To really use these, you need to understand the underlying API calls. So I don't think you're going to see this on the exam. I think this is one of those topics that they threw in there for you to be familiar with, or as I sometimes say, these are ideas that a person who is doing the VCAP should probably be familiar with, but honestly, these aren't something you probably use on a day-to-day basis. They're very advanced, and again, it's just not something I expect you to see. There are such a thing as data store providers. Data store providers gives you access to files on the data stores. It's called Vim Data Store. And when you connect to a server with Connect VI Server, you can access what we call two default drives. One is VM Store, which displays the data stores available on the last connected server, vSphere server, and VM Stores with an S plural that contains all data stores available on all the servers connected with the current session. So, this is pretty simple. CD space VM Stores : do an ls and it'll show all my vCenters, so I connect to the first one. Do an ls, data center, and then it'll show my data stores, and I can walk my data stores. CD, and walk through and access the files. It's just a way to access the files on the data store. There are commands you can do to modify the files and change them, but I mean, this is great if you need to write a script to do all this and walk through and do some things, but normally if you're just doing onesie-twosie file changes, it's better to do it through the UI. Along with the data store provider is an inventory provider. Basically, it lets you walk the raw inventory that, say, vCenter sees, called the Vim inventory provider. And when you connect to a server, you have two commandlets, vi and vis. So do vis : notice my prompt changes, type ls, go to my vCenter, and it's just basically going to let you walk through everything again. So you can walk to VMs, do an ls, it'll pull all the VMs. Host, it'll pull all the host. Actually, I guess it does a cluster, then it does the host. And it does my host, and you can just walk through different things and pull information that may not be available through the regular commandlets. I don't expect to see this on the exam, just because this is a more advanced PowerCLI. You would have to have a fairly complex script to provide output that could be graded and tested. So I don't expect to see that. What I do expect you to have to know, and this wraps up the lesson by the way, what I do expect you to need to know is how to install PowerCLI, how to set the execution policy to remote signed, how to install the update manager commandlets, which is easy. Just you run them and then run the command to the PS snap in to make sure that you actually see them. Know how to run an external script. And remember, I showed you that. It's just the path and the script name. Know how to interpret any errors that come out of a script, and they're pretty, I don't expect you to know every PowerCLI error that you'll see, but know to read those errors and fix any problems in a script. If you have to add some functionality to it, then figure out which commandlet to use, and again, you can, do get vi commands if you want to. Command. It gives you all of them, and remember you can do get help and the name of the command, so stage patch. It'll give you that, and if you need some examples to walk you through it, or you want to know all the options, which are required, which are not, what order, you can do -full, and it'll give you all that. So there's a lot of places to get information. This is probably, when I took the VCAP, it was the most daunting because it's so wide open of an option. I mean, most of the things that we've learned are fairly defined tasks within the VMware environment. So this is a little daunting, but don't let it worry you. I haven't, I don't think you're going to be too involved on this. So just know the things that I just went over. Feel comfortable moving around a bit in the environment. And really, if you're a vSphere admin, it's worth spending time learning PowerCLI and looking at some of the community scripts. Even if it's not for this exam, they can be very, very useful. So that's it for this lesson, and I look forward to seeing you on the next one.